So, as we continue our adventure with Jack and Annie, we are going to go on with Chapter 6 with pea soup. If you remember yesterday in our chapter, we learned that first they had to go down the ship into the hatch down there, and they got to see the laboratory of Professor Henry. And they were then asked by the captain it was time to go to, what did they call it? The wardroom? It wasn't the washroom. What was that word? Can you remember? And Jack wasn't feeling too happy about that because, remember, he was feeling a little seasick. So let's see what happens as we continue on. So the chapter is pea soup. Well, what in the world could that mean? I mean, have you ever eaten pea soup? I love it. I love split pea soup with ham. It's a great kind of soup. And I know that it's, just think about the look of what pea soup is. It's usually green. Sometimes it can be a yellow pea soup, and it's kind of thick and creamy. And so I wonder what that has to do with being on board a boat. Second, before you start listening, make sure you have gathered your sticky notes and your scratch paper so you can be writing down those ask and answer questions when we find them in our text. Remember, you can always pause the video so that you can write down and jot down your notes and your thoughts. All right, let's get going. Henry led Jack and Annie out of the sea lab, locking the door behind them. Then he led the way through the hall and down another flight of steep steps. In the faint light of the lower deck, Jack saw naval officers and scientists streaming through a door ahead. He, Annie, and Henry lined up behind them and filed into the wardroom. Still wearing their bulky life vests, Jack and Annie sat awkwardly on a long bench in front of a table, and many of the men just stared at them with curiosity. The professor smiled, but the captain did not look happy. "I thought our friends might join us for lunch, sir," Henry said to the captain. "I promise they will return to shore after the storm." "Very well," said the captain. "Immediately after the storm." "Aye, aye, sir," said Henry, and he turned to the other officers at the table. "Gentlemen, may I introduce Annie and Jack from America? They are adventurous travelers." "Hi," murmured Jack and Annie, and the officers and scientists, they all nodded politely. Sailors in white uniforms acted as waiters, bringing plates and cups to the table. "What are we having for lunch?" Annie whispered to Henry. "The usual," said Henry, sighing. "Salted meat, pickles, dried biscuits." "This is not good," thought Jack. He was right. When he was served, he could hardly look at his food, much less eat it. He was thirsty, though, so he reached for his cup and took a long sip of water. Jack immediately spit the liquid back into his cup. It was unbelievably sour. He gagged and he coughed, and when he looked up, everyone was staring at him, including the captain. "Excuse me," said Jack, wiping his mouth, and his face felt hot from embarrassment. "You just guzzled your lime juice, lad," said the professor. "Most of us take it in small sips." "Lime juice?" asked Annie. "Why?" "It prevents scurvy," said the professor. "Every day we all drink a cup of lime juice for vitamin C. Otherwise we get sores and rotten teeth." "Yuck," said Annie, and Henry smiled. "Oh, you won't get scurvy if you eat fruits and vegetables," he said. "But it's hard to keep vegetables and fruits fresh on board a ship." Jack couldn't think about eating or drinking anything at the moment. All of it, even the pickles, made him feel even queasier. And the rolling of the ship didn't help either. "The waves seem to be getting worse," he said to Henry. "They do indeed," said Henry, and he turned and looked out of a small round window. "Can't see a thing. It's as thick as pea soup out there." So what is he referring to when he's talking about it being as thick as pea soup? When you look outside a window and you can't really see anything, what do we usually call that? We usually call it like a thick fog, or like just the other day we had all that smoke in the air and we could not see. So this is what is called a phrase. Okay? It's as thick as pea soup out there. It just means it's really hard to see anything very far from where you're looking. So the ship lurched, and cups and plates slid across the table and crashed to the floor, and Annie grabbed Jack as the ship rocked wildly. "Steady as she goes," said the captain. "It seems the storm is fully upon us," said the professor. And the ship lurched again, and more cups and plates slid off the table. Jack and Annie almost slid off their chairs, but without any sign of nervousness. The officers and scientists, they stood up, hurried out of the room as if they knew just what to do in bad weather. So there's our lurch. That is your vocabulary word for this week. So pay attention to what's been happening before and what is happening afterwards, and can you figure out what the meaning of lurched means so that you can write that in. Okay? "I'll take you down to the hold," said Henry to Jack and Annie. "We'll wait there until the waves calm down." And the ship pitched violently as they stood up from the table. Holding on to the back of their life vests, Henry steered Jack and Annie out of the room, and Jack nearly slipped on the wet floor, his bare feet crushing some soggy biscuits and pickles, and he tried not to think about it. Out in the dark hall, the wind howled from the stairwell from the top deck, spraying them all with ocean foam. "I must go secure my lab," Henry shouted to Jack and Annie, and he pointed to the stairs. "Go down one more flight, and I'll join you when I can." "We'll come with you," said Annie. "'Tis better to be safe. Follow the others quickly. I'll come soon." Henry unlocked the door to his lab and disappeared inside. "Come on, let's go down," said Jack, and he grabbed Annie's hand and pulled her toward the stairwell. Officers and sailors were all heading down the steps ahead of them. And just as Jack and Annie started down, the ship lurched again, and Jack's stomach lurched with it. He covered his mouth. "I'm definitely going to be sick," he thought. He really didn't want to throw up on the stairs or in front of the captain and the others. Oh my gosh, can you imagine? Have you ever experienced something like that where you thought you were around other people and you're like, "Oh, please no, please no, please no." "You go down. I'll be right there," Jack shouted to Annie. "Why are you going down? Where are you going?" Annie yelled. "Just go down," said Jack, and then he whirled around and charged up the 2 flights of steep steps to the top deck. I pause here. I wonder, what do you think Jack is doing when he runs back up to the top deck? Why do you think he went back up there? What was happening with Jack? When Jack stepped onto the deck, the rain was pounding, the wind was howling, the waves looked like dark mountains, sea foam was blowing everywhere. Jack knew at once he'd made a mistake. "Better to be embarrassed than drown," he thought. And just as he turned to go back down the steps, Annie burst onto the deck. "Jack!" she cried. "What are you doing?" Jack forgot all about throwing up. "I made a mistake," he shouted. "We shouldn't be up here. Go down. I'm coming with you. We have to go back down." And he pushed Annie toward the stairwell. And a giant wave crashed over the side of the ship. Jack fell and slid across the foam-covered deck. It was impossible to see anything. The wind was screaming, and Jack tried to stand, but wearing his clumsy life vest, he couldn't get back on his feet. Jack finally hauled himself back up. But just as he did, another giant wave broke over the side of the ship, and the ship rolled, and Jack fell to his knees, and another wave crashed over the deck, and Jack was swept away by the foaming water and tossed overboard into the churning sea. Oh no, poor Jack. Do you see him here? How do you think he's feeling right now? What do you think has happened to him? What do you think will happen to him? What kind of emotions is Jack going on? What kind of emotions do you think Annie is feeling once she sees her brother being swept overboard? So we're going to take a look at all those feelings, and I want you to go back down to your ask and answer questions with all your little jot down notes, and make sure you're looking into the text of chapter 6 to find the answer to your question for this week. And remember to look up your vocabulary word. What was that again? I think it was lurched. Okay, check your thing. And we will continue our work as we go along. Bye-bye.